Chris, my facilitator, is going to take the podium just now. Colleagues, can I ask that we come back to session, please? Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to request Chris, but I sat with my officials here. In respect of, we're going to take Chris's session, which is it carries a resolution, and it is my belief that we need to really be thorough on this one. And then the following panel, I've just got a bilateral to do with Mr. Allen. Maybe we just need to find each other there so that we are able to save time. So I may just need to call you up here, but then the interventions can be made from the floor so that we kill that panel without losing the information that would have come from it. So we will not take presentations if people can just make their interventions from the floor. But I've asked Chris to talk to that. Thank you very much. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome back. In terms of the administration, a couple of things. First of all, if those chairs of the panels that haven't already done so could give me a brief note of their conclusions, that would be very helpful. Joyce, you've already done it, thank you. And that will help for the report. So the important things you want reflected in the report, if I could have something in writing, that would be really helpful. The plan for the next session after this, the discussion session, which is largely the navies and the supporting forces, is to try and keep it brief whilst maintaining the content. We'll be inviting people to speak from the floor rather than formal presentations, bearing in mind that this afternoon we will be going into the discussion groups and those key points can come out then as well, so to avoid a bit of duplication. So apologies if that offends anybody, but we need to crack on. Before I start on this, and I realise there's a lot of time pressure, this is important because there's a resolution possibly and further action hanging off it. So first, can I ask, who has read the read-ahead paper? Those of you that haven't, please do, because it'll save an awful lot of me talking. How many of you have seen that 3 draft resolutions have been circulated by email? Great, they have. The second resolution is relating to looking forward to developing a maritime security strategy. And that's really what I'm briefing you on here. So the third thing is this presentation, like all the others, will be on the website. So in order to speed it up, we'll go fairly quickly through it. Everyone happy so far? All had coffee? All awake? Marvellous. Moving swiftly on. Okay, so I mentioned the read-ahead paper. What's it all about? National regional strategies and implementation. That's what I'm going to be talking about in the next 20 minutes or so. We're not just looking at IMO regulations, we are also looking at the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It's already been mentioned a few times, but it's that big overall picture that we're looking at in this. There's a number of other resolutions out there, the United Nations General Assembly resolutions, various Security Council resolutions, IMO and other conventions that are all important here. I'm not going to go through them, you know what they are, but bear in mind we're not just chasing pirates, we're doing a lot of other stuff in the security game. So we've got the IMO conventions, we've got the UNODC conventions, transnational organised crime, drugs, etc. It's an integrated approach, and that's what we really need. So all of those instruments I've just referenced to set out states' responsibilities at sea, and we've gone through quite a few of those already. Border protection, maritime offshore security, fishery protection, IUU fishing, countering illegal trafficking, drugs, guns, people, wildlife, whatever. Protecting the environment, safety of navigation, search and rescue. All of these key points that you have been raising to this point. So it's that whole much wider picture on organising and running the maritime space. We've been preaching interagency cooperation, both at national level, which we'll come back to, and also international level. How many times have you had 1 week someone from IMO coming in, the next week someone from UNODC, the next week someone from the EU, the next week someone from the US? Your poor staff don't have time to do their jobs because they're fending off well-meaning helpers. How do we organise ourselves to manage that process? And it's a two-way process. So all of those partners and others on the slide. Jeddah Amendment, Djibouti Code of Conduct widened the scope, as you're well aware. But if you look at it, if you actually take it apart, you can break it down into a number of key critical measures that need to be put in place. And the first one was develop a regional architecture to enhance communication, cooperation, and communication between countries in the region. That's what we've been talking about here, the information sharing. What information are we sharing? Not just dots on a screen, but how are you doing this? What's your legal framework? What are your best practices at work? How do we share that sort of information as well? Then developing national border security, maritime and law enforcement policies, legislation and capabilities. And we talked earlier about capability versus capacity. To build a firm foundation for sustainable development. And we talked about sustainable development goals. Then looking at what are our national capabilities and what are the gaps and how do we fill those for all of those areas. As I said, the slides will be on the website, so please allow me just to flash through them. The next thing is to develop and promote a multi-agency whole-of-government approach to border security, maritime law enforcement, with plans and coordination between departments, agencies, etc. And the planning bit is very, very important and key to where we're going here. And then the national focal points. The job that you are doing really well, how do we expand that role so you're covering the other bits outside of your own agency's competence? And that's where the National Maritime Security and Facilitation Committees come in, and that liaison there. Then the National Information Sharing Centres that you've already committed to do and that are in the DCoC, making it work. And what are the tools that we can tap into to make it more efficient? The Interpol I-24/7, dealing with the regional operation centres, the regional fusion centres, and so on. Getting the information in, as well as talking to other focal points. And then the legal basis. What we're talking about in these cases is crime. But it's only criminal, it's only illegal if there's a law that says it's illegal. So what are your legal frameworks? And how can we and others help with that? And I mentioned on the slide, IMO, UNODC, Interpol, lots of willing helpers out there. But you've got to call them in and get them to do what you want, not what they're just going to give you. And then maritime surveillance system, understanding what's going on out there, long-range identification tracking, AIS, we've heard about Sea Vision, we've heard about EORIS and various others. How are we mixing that lot together? And then getting to the crunch, formulating a plan of action. Your business plan for the sea, if you like. What am I going to do with that 200 miles of opportunity that is my exclusive economic zone? How am I going to develop my maritime sector, my port sector? How am I going to develop my blue economy and make it sustainable? So this is really where it comes down to. If you have a plan that says, I want to do this, this, and this, and I need this, that, and the other to do it, and I don't need that, then you are in control and you can target the assistance that's coming in better there. So that's really the point with that one. And then finally, just getting out there and enforcing the law. That's the important bit at the end of the day. So that's really what's the 10 key points that are in or implied in the Jeddah Amendment. Now, going through this, and I use this slide quite often to show how brilliant the Jeddah Amendment is and how well you guys are doing, we've identified national head of state buy-in. Because if customs are arguing with the Navy, are arguing with the Maritime Authority, are arguing with the Port Authority, and you're all competing for the same bit of money, it takes someone in charge to slap your heads together and say, play nicely, and share those capabilities. We talked about law enforcement detachments earlier. Why not? That sort of thing. So head of state buy-in is important, having the National Maritime Security Facilitation Committee, interagency cooperation, building national capability first. It's all very well the regional authorities saying you should do this, but unless you're capable of doing it yourselves first, it's not going to work. And then, what's in it for me? Getting all of the relevant agencies involved. Big picture, looking at fishing as a revenue generator and a food security issue, not just FAO's problem, because security underpins development. And then who does this sort of goes to the head of state bit, who does your organisation work for? Well, you actually work for your taxpayers. It's all very well saying, I'm the Navy and I'm in charge of this, or I'm the border guard and I'm in charge of this. You all work for the same country and need to work with the other agencies. So that interagency cooperation, law enforcement detachment, shared costs, billing arrangements, these are things that should be taken into account. If your Navy is providing a platform for fishery inspectors, and those inspectors are driving up revenue from licenses and seizure of illegal catches, some of that money can come back to the Navy to pay for their fuel. Win-win, yeah? Looking at law enforcement as an enabler for maritime prosperity, development, and a business arrangement. And that's your economy of effort. So all these things, food security, energy supply security, better facilitation is going to lead to increased trade, prosperity, reduction in smuggling of drugs, weapons, people, reduction in irregular migration, etc. So it's all good stuff. Happy with that? Have I flogged that one to death? Good, I see nodding. Okay. So we're talking really about having a maritime security strategy. If you like, the Djibouti Code of Conduct Jeddah Amendment is what to do. The maritime security strategy is how you're going to do it, and the things you need to put in place to actually make it happen. So looking at the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, enhancing cooperation, coordination, communication, meeting states' obligations. The challenges are multifaceted, but the solutions have common bases. But the overall aim is prosperity. That's really why we're doing this, to improve your country's sustainability, prosperity. And these are national issues, not departmental. And one thing I can be certain of is you don't have the resources that you need to do your job. But actually, maybe your country has, but they're spread out. And how do we coordinate that? So, I'll stop ranting in a minute, I promise. But the Jeddah meeting in November last year adopted its resolution on responding to evolving maritime challenges and security priorities of signatory states. Operative paragraph 4 of that talks about, within the context of broader national maritime strategy, encourage signatory states to review and/or develop their national maritime security strategy. So we've agreed this is a good direction of travel. The Resolution 2 also agreed that the steering committee would encourage members to advocate actively across all sectors of government for a full implementation of the Jeddah Amendment in order to protect the population, develop maritime governance capacity and capability, and strengthen the region's legal framework. So you've already agreed to some of this stuff: protect the region, its citizens and economies by supporting safety and security of maritime borders, ports, offshore installations, and to enhance capabilities in science, technology, innovation, and cyber domain to increase the understanding of the blue economy and to detect and respond to illegal activity. So you've already set a very firm basis for this work. We've put some proposals in the read-ahead paper for you to take it forward. So just a suggestion, the grand strategy, if we're thinking big picture, it's not about maritime security, it's about what's good for your country, is to increase prosperity through enhanced border security, maritime security, and maritime law enforcement. That's where we want to be. How do we get there? Well, let's break it down into some strategic objectives. Protect the population, develop maritime governance, protect the states through ends, ways, and means. The ends are that safety, that prosperity. The means of getting there, what do we need to do in order to get there? And the ways, how do we get there? And the means, what do we need to do it? And quantifying that in a strategy is a great way of communicating to the outside world your intentions and your needs and focusing what your supporting partners can do. So suggesting which the strategy sets out the ways to address all the challenges detailed and or implied in the Jeddah Amendment, including piracy, armed robbery against ships, illicit maritime activity, and the means required to do so. Those of you from naval or military backgrounds will recognize this from the command estimate process. That's all it is. I'll keep mentioning fishing, and I will keep coming back to fishing. It's a major potential source of revenue that's going to pay for this. The losses due to IUU fishing are phenomenal. Southern Africa, 62.8 billion per year. Eastern Africa, $19.3 billion per year. How much better could you spend that money than losing it? A little bit on the, this is where the declared fishermen are, the ones who are setting their AIS on, and this is from Global Fishing Watch. That's where the undeclared ones are. So there's a lot of illegal activity going on that we don't know about, but using the technologies and abilities that you're developing here, we can do something about that. So the plan really for implementing the strategy, a breakdown of critical measures to be implemented, to include things like legal frameworks, national organization, legal processes, maritime situational awareness, capability, liaison, crisis management, all those good things. Way forward, we've already talked about establishing national maritime security committees. Some of its terms of reference, you might want to look at this if you're still working on it. And then moving forward in developing that policy, the legislation, the mandates, and the legal limits to those mandates. What are your agencies entitled to do? What can't they do? Who has jurisdiction in this area? Who has jurisdiction in that area? How do you work the puzzle? How do you get the pieces of the jigsaw to work together? How are you going to conduct operational matters, interagency communication, and the international and regional cooperation? So these are matters for your national maritime security committees to work out. and each organisation supporting and leads roles, supporting roles. Who's in charge, where, what, who can do what, and get that worked out in advance. The number of times we've been out into countries, talked to different agencies, all think they're in charge. When you press them, they realise they don't have that capability or the legal mandate or the money to do what they're doing. And they've never talked to each other before. So getting people to talk to each other is critical. And we talked there about the analysis of areas of competence and areas of known problems. I am getting to the point. The way forward with this is a thorough analysis of the implications of the legal instruments to which your countries have signed up and the respective competence of your member organisations, with a view to setting out a detailed framework for a national maritime security plan and a business plan for its implementation. What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? What do I need? And also, you might want to look at how the international community can help in the short term, medium term, and longer term. This could include subject matter experts, people to help your lawyers draft the laws, for example, or training teams that we talked about before. Development of maritime security plans or bilateral assistance. So what can you actually call in? What do you want to do? That needs to be factored in. You might have some areas of focus. For example, looking at facilitation, improving your ability to trade, reducing the bureaucracy in your ports, making it more efficient. So maritime single windows, port facilitation security committees, interagency cooperation. Or it may be focusing on the supply chain. How are you going to secure and facilitate that? Looking at what the World Customs Organization have done, regulated agents, oversight of security measures. Could we focus on port security, implementation of ISPS code, community security best practices, port security management systems, that sort of thing. Training trainers and prevention of stowaways, that sort of stuff. All the different areas there. So it's much wider than just chasing pirates. I think I've laboured that point. What we need is the political will of member states, the agreement to act, the regional affirmation through the non-binding agreement, in this case Jeddah Amendment, a clear statement of intent to development partners. I need your money, what I'm going to spend it on is this, please help. And looking at the steering committee as a custodian of a sort of agreed regional strategy with an agreement to give force to it. So what we're asking you, the member state, the signatory states to the Djibouti Code, to look up to is really to reaffirm the intent of Resolution 2. Do you still think it's a good idea? Because I do. And then perhaps establish a group to work the proposals out, because this is going to take a while to do, considering the goals or the ends, the objectives or the ways, and the approaches or the means to achieve those things, to increase prosperity through enhanced maritime security and law enforcement throughout all DCoC signatory states, to develop that comprehensive delivery and action plan. So that's really what the resolution that you've been emailed is talking about. Be very interested in your feedback on that. And the third bit is to invite the friends of DCoC to provide sufficient funding to the trust fund to facilitate this work, because it's going to take quite a lot of discussion, toing and froing to do. That's my pitch. I'll shut up now. If anybody's got any questions, please go for it. Otherwise, please consider the draft resolution 2 that you have been sent and discuss it when we break into the breakout groups later today. See what you think there. Happy? Awake? Thank you. It's amazing what you can achieve when you don't care who gets the credit. That's me done. Thank you. So.
Thanks, Chris. That was very helpful. Now, can I request only Mr. Allen to come up here, but as I had requested, distinguished delegates, that he's the only one that must come here, and he is going to call interventions from the floor, and this is how we shall manage this. What I will request for him to do is later on, if we find a slot, as I hope we will, that he makes all his notes and then sums up the conclusions to the discussion. So, yes, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I think that was a very clear set of instructions, and we are under the clock. I'm reminded of an incident, if I may. When I was a young student at school, my math teacher, I once came in 5 minutes late, and he said to me, there were 20 people in the class, you just wasted 100 minutes for everybody. It wasn't just 5 minutes, it was 5 minutes times everybody. I think I was 12. That had quite an impact on me for the rest of my life. So I'm quite aware of the importance of keeping time here, and the chairman's there. So for our next panel, we'll be talking about aligning international efforts with regional needs and priorities. I think this is a particularly important subject, and without any delays, we'll get right into, and if I can ask the presenters to stay in their seats, as said, and if you have many slides, I would prefer that you just summarize quickly what your presentation is about, and to keep it under 5 minutes, and I'm going to have a stopwatch to make sure that you stay under 5. Hopefully I can make that work very well. And so our first presentation will be by the CMF. Is CMF ready? Okay, we'll move on to the next one, and that's from the IMO, which I imagine would be Mitch.
Thank you very much, Moderator and Chair. You'll be pleased to know that I'll be less than 5 minutes. Mine is really just a summary, because I've listened to every speaker since yesterday, starting from the rallying call from the Honourable Minister, Heike from IMO, the EU, and everybody who has spoken until now. And what we'll all agree on is that we need to work together. Cooperation has to be there, and coordination. What we've not agreed upon is how. And I think that should be the focus of how we move forward to building those blocks. Now, a few points have been raised in trying to address the how. And the first one, I think, that comes to mind is building trust. For example, for the international partners, the international navies, what do you need to do to be seen to be an ally? How do you bridge the gap so that you can work more closely and work more with the involvement of the regional stakeholders? I say this with a lot of encouragement, because I listened to the presentation from the USA. They talked about sea rider opportunities. And I recall that I think from around 2012, we had a concerted campaign as DCoC trying to encourage the navies to work more closely with the regional partners, and even encourage the concept of sea riders. I'm glad it didn't happen, but I'm glad that some of the partners are considering this. I think this is a good way to try and build that trust, and especially if the discussion around coordination of operations at sea is going to materialize. The next thing is facilitation of coordination. Of course, we've got lots of stakeholders, and let's not be naive about it. Of course, there is national interest and all sorts of interest in it, competing priorities sometimes. But then, these are realities that we must live with. But it's really how to make the best use of the opportunities. And I'm going to propose here a way forward, because it occurs to me that everybody in this room is an IMO member state or comes from the IMO, as an IMO background. And I think we've got a common denominator from that sense. And I guess we can try and work together from that approach and see how we can try and get everybody together in this moving forward. So when it comes to the actual coordination, the role of the matrix, I think, is key. And we would be, would be more than happy to consider how we enhance this matrix so that we cover we try and capture, to make the coordination really happen. Like what I said yesterday, it's not just about a source of information for you, but more of how you create a single window out of this. And I think we can work together with the friends of the DCoC and the member states to see how these enhancements can take place. The next thing I would like to mention, to highlight the opportunities that you get under the JEDA amendment. Because, English may be my second language, but my understanding is cooperating to the fullest possible extent, to me, means a lot. And it's cooperating in the fullest possible extent in doing a lot of stuff. And therefore, it creates opportunities for everybody to be able to work together in doing what we all need to do.
30 seconds, Mitch. Sorry
Yes.
to say that.
Now, thank you. So the next thing, of course, will be linked to the matrix, and of course the expansion of the sub-working groups. But of course, this will require resources. So we can build on that in our next groups. How can this be resourced to make it work? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mitch. And actually, if you want to have another minute to say, that's okay. We missed one presenter. Thank you. Round of applause to Mitch on that one. For our next presentation, it's from a very tall gentleman from Denmark who I am certain will have a very interesting presentation. 4 slides, I understand. So have at it, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll be focusing on the Friends of Djibouti Code of Conduct and also provide a bit of advice to the DCoC signatory states at the end. I've been told to be brief, so I will. The background for Danish presence in the Horn of Africa and Eastern Africa in general, it dates back to the piracy period off the coast of Somalia. We've had more than 10 years of engagement with Kenya Navy. We have also engagements with UNODC and Kenya Coast Guard Service, and we have a maritime sector development focus with the Kenyan government. Next, please. So, next slide. Here we go. So what are Danish interests in the region? Basically, it's not only tied to the region. Danish interests are open sea lines of communication. And this is probably not just a Danish interest. I think all nations should be interested in that. Open and free trade benefits all parties, and it assists a mutual understanding and cooperation, and thereby stability and peace. So it's an important thing. It's not just moving goods around, it's also cooperating and understanding each other. Next slide, please. So my overarching message here is not to join, and this is addressed to the friends, not to join in with solutions from home, but actually to support local and regional solutions. We have a tendency to believe that there's only one right solution, and that's the one that we know from back home. Maybe in math this works, picking on your example from your math class, sir, but in the real world there are more solutions to a problem. And what we have to look for here is sustainable solutions that can work after we have left. So it doesn't work bringing in our own solutions, we have to work on local solutions. And nobody knows more about the challenges in the environment than those who grew up in the area and lived in the environment that frames those challenges. So this is very important for us as friends to honor and respect that it has to be locally developed solutions. Next slide, please, and last. What we do, we are here to advise the DCoC signatory states. I will conclude my short briefing here with a few pieces of advice to the friends and also to the signatory states after that. Firstly, to the friends, support your partners in the development of a plan. Don't bring one in from back home. Do a sanity check. Is it feasible? Can it be done? Make sure to work on expectation management, both in your own capitals, who will expect you to do wonders in 2 weeks. It's not possible. You cannot change behavior and culture in short times. You have to work, and the challenge is when you come from a democracy that rotates every 4 years, it's very hard to make a plan that lasts longer than 4 years, but we have to push for that. It's also important with the partners, because everybody wants fast solutions. They want things to happen tomorrow. It is not possible. What we are talking here, when we talk about maritime tradition, the Danish Navy is more than 500 years old. The Danish tradition goes back to the Vikings. You cannot create that in 2 weeks. You have to work, and you have to manage that expectation and explain that if you want to build a Coast Guard, and you start today, you may have one in 30 years. You cannot just take army officers and coppers and throw them in and then they're Coast Guard. It doesn't work. You build it from the bottom up. It's institutionalized. It's a esprit de corps that you have to build up and a maritime tradition. Secondly, also to the friends, the coordination is important. We tend to all want to do the same thing, not covering a 360-degree circle, so we have to coordinate better amongst ourselves. To the Djibouti Code of Conduct signatory states, I'd just like to say, break down the silos. It's been mentioned a few times now, and I think it's worth repeating. Don't compete with yourself, because that's going to be counterproductive to achieving the results. This goes both at the national levels, but also within the region of the whole Djibouti Code of Conduct area. Don't be shy, because you're the experts. We bring in knowledge from outside, and you can cherry pick in the knowledge, but you have to use your local knowledge of what works in your regions, and then combine that into a working, durable local solution. And with that, I'll conclude. Thank you for your patience, and I'm open for questions. Thanks.
A huge round of applause. Thank you for that. That was amazing. You actually came in a few seconds under 5 minutes. I've long heard about the legendary efficiency of the Danes. We have seen this in action. That, sir, was intervention operational poetry. I commend you. And the content was amazing. Thank you so much for that. I'm sure we'll have time afterwards for questions, which we'll take after that. Wonderful. And with this tall bar, for the next presenter from the EU, we look forward.
Thank you very much. The representative of the EU delegation could not make it today, so as a representative of UCAP Somalia, I cannot make any political speech or position. However, I can say that from an operational level, the Common Security and Defense Policy missions as UCAP Somalia and EUNAVFOR Atalanta stand ready to support and cooperate with the Djibouti Code of Conduct and with all this system. And I also quote the MASE program, which stands ready to collaborate. And so with this, I thank everyone and I wish a good collaboration, and we stand here to support and ready. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And thanks for stepping to the plate. Amazing. We're doing well, I think. Okay. Our next presentation is from the UK MTO, Lieutenant Commander Bell, if I may. And it's quite all right to come to the podium. We have time.
Good afternoon. Or good morning even. No, we are just afternoon. For those of you that do not know me already, I am Dougie Bell, OIC of the UKMTO Dubai. Thank you for the opportunity to speak as a friend of the DCoC today. Aligning international efforts with regional needs and priorities. How can UKMTO best support DCoC's regional needs? Well, there is an overarching requirement to prioritise, coordinate and synchronise activity, in particular information exchanges to achieve coherence or an understand of the maritime domain. If we look to the principles of war for guidance, we can see that a single, unambiguous aim is the keystone of success. Share pertinent and actionable information accurately and in a timely manner through a single point of contact, acting as a trusted interlocutor with validated information, a single source of truth. Inform the maritime communities. Morale is a positive state of mind which leads to a sense of purpose, well-being and reassurance. Reassure the maritime communities. Security is the provision maintenance of MDA, the achievement of domain coherence that affords freedom of navigation through provision of effective maritime security. Concentration of force needs accurate, prioritised, coordinated, synchronised provision of information exchanges to realise the intended maritime security effects, when, where, and in the manner required. Use the right tools at the right time and in the right place. Economy of effort is the judicious exploitation of a trusted, single interlocutor in the achievement of maritime domain coherence. All too often, everybody wants to know everything now. But is that truly economical effort? Is it validated, prioritised, coordinated, or synchronized? Often, the answer is not. We lead to overdemand, confusion, circular questioning, circular reporting, and, most importantly, delay of action. Mutual trust, goodwill, unity of purpose all underpin successful partnerships. Cooperation entails incorporation of teamwork and sharing of the dangers, the burdens, the risks, the opportunities, and of course the trust. UKMTO's role is to inform and reassure. In doing so, UKMTO's approach is a-national, a-commercial, and apolitical. UKMTO is neutral in providing a conduit for information exchange for reaching appropriate operational responders. UKMTO provides timely maritime security information to industry as well as responding organisations, but we do not provide coordination of the operational response. But we enable the informed decision making by all of those stakeholders. UKMTO makes direct contact with vessels reporting with the UKMTO's administered voluntary reporting area scheme, and it is unique in that it visits and briefs ships teams in their own vessels. UKMTO also looks more broadly to understand patterns of life and the transit of maritime trade to and from
adjacent sea areas by talking and listening directly to the seafarers themselves. UKMTO has, for well over 15 years, acted as the trusted conduit to manage the exchange of sensitive information to enable informed decision-making. The trade report to UKMTO, because the UKMTO brand is trusted and it has the ability to facilitate rapid and impartial distribution of incident-related information to enable the timely and informed safety, security, and commercial decision-making. This is critical. UKMTO provides assured, specialised information and advice focused on security, freedom of navigation, and trade across the maritime domain. UKMTO's Maritime Trade Information Centre is the 365 24/7 information hub connecting diverse stakeholders concerned with MTO information whilst managing relationships with spokes and the forward-deployed mini-hub, UKMTO Dubai. The UKMTO MDA network has ILOs at the IFC Singapore, the RCOC Seychelles, and the IOR IFC, as you've heard earlier this week. UKMTO conducts a significant capacity and relationship building through engagement with military forces, international organisations, NGOs, other governments, private and commercial actors, local and regional populations in achieving maritime domain awareness and coherence. In summary, UKMTO is a trusted and prime reporting point of contact that is a proven interlocutor and information exchange between maritime communities and recognised authorities. UKMTO enables maritime security and ultimately unhindered freedom of navigation, thus aligning international efforts with DCoC regional needs and priorities. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thanks, Commander Bell. Amazing. I enjoyed that tremendously. And would now like to introduce our next interlocutor, Mr. Delvin Bell from the United States, if he's here. Delvin Jones, sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. First and foremost, hopefully I don't speak too fast. I don't want to give my interpreters any fits by just going so fast, speaking like a typical person from America. So apologies up front for that. Again, I just want to echo what my Indian brother said this morning and just say thank you to our South African host for your warmth as well as for your hospitality. Thank you again for everything that you've done for us. And again, thank you to Djibouti Code of Conduct Gentlemen, to all of our teammates here for giving us the opportunity to speak. I promise you I will be brief.
Have at it, Delvin. We're looking forward.
We're here because we strongly support the desire and achievement of a common solution to successfully combating transnational organized crime, piracy, illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, and other maritime crimes in the West Indian Ocean region. Nationally, United States Department of State, we collaborate with national and international partners, starting nationally with our Department of Defense, more specifically with our Navy, as well as our Marine Corps, working in various exercises, and most of us are very familiar with the Cutlass Express. We also work with the Department of Homeland Security, more specifically with our United States Coast Guard. You've heard from our Coast Guard teammate earlier with the work that they do in terms of building capacity of maritime partners situated within the West Indian Ocean area. I work in international narcotics and law enforcement at the Department of State. And in INL, we have a program what is called the East Africa Transnational Organized Crime Program. But we want you to be reassured in knowing that because the name says East Africa Transnational Organized Crime Program, it's not limited to just East Africa. Traditionally, or at least the traditional East Africa, we prioritize East and Southern Africa as well as the West Indian Ocean area through projects that support security as well as criminal justice reform, combating transnational organized crime, as well as building capacity of regional maritime security partners such as the Regional Maritime Information Fusion Center, as well as the Regional Coordination Operations Center, to improve the interdiction, investigation, and prosecution of transnational organized crime across the region. I'll take a few moments to highlight some of our implementing partners we coordinated with to achieve our two primary lines of effort, which are national drug enforcement agencies increasing interdiction and seizure of drugs and illicit narcotics, and of course, maritime and judicial agencies disrupt transnational organized crime through effective patrols, investigations, and prosecutions of maritime crimes. Again, I'm just going to list off the organizations that we work with in the interest of time so that we can allow time for questions. Our Drug Enforcement Agency, falling under our Department of Justice, International Development Law Organization, or IDLO, Interpol, under our Project Compass, UNODC, GMCP, teammate sitting right next to us, International Organization of Migration, and UNODC Container Control Program. Again, I want to allow time for questions. And just to answer the question, how do we align international efforts to support? We're here again because we support the Djibouti Code of Conduct JEDA Amendment. Learning, we want to listen to you because we don't have all the answers. We want to learn from you because you know better than we do what you all need, how we can be a best support to the Djibouti Code of Conduct JEDA Amendment. And if we sit here and listen and keep our mouths shut, we just might learn something. And collaboration, yes, I used that word again. You can count it, I think it's 37 times. Collaboration with our Djibouti Code of Conduct, collaboration with our regional organizations, collaboration with all of you, again, to listen, to learn, and also to provide support as a friend of the Djibouti Code of Conduct. Subject to your questions, those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Wow, amazing. Thanks, Delvin. And if I may have another round of applause for all of our presenters this afternoon. We gave them a challenge, and they more than met that challenge, and very informative presentations all across the board. So thank you all very much. I didn't really have much to do. You guys did it all. It was amazing. But in all seriousness, we do have time now for questions. And if I may reach back to Chris's presentation earlier. In one of his slides, he mentioned head of state buy-in. So I've had the pleasure of meeting 3 of our heads of state. One was a soldier, next was a long-term civil servant, and the current one is a former priest. But there's one quality that I've seen with all heads of state that I've ever met. It is a focus and attention on the problems at hand. And when you talk about something like maritime security, there's one thing they all want, a single picture of truth, to echo what Commander Bell said. So I ask everyone at the audience, does your head of state have a single picture of truth of what's happening on his or her waters? I can assure you they want that. And when we talk about the international, to the regional, and down to the national, I think it's, without question, your head of state is that key person that makes it all work. If they don't understand it, if they don't understand the relationships, I think it's going to be very difficult. And I think when I look at all the pieces here, we have to make it simple. And to make one last point about that single picture of truth, there's another quality of heads of state, as with all CEOs. I can always tell where you are in the hierarchy by how long your emails are. When you're new, you tend to write long emails that nobody reads. As you rise up the management ranks, they get shorter and shorter, and I've seen emails from the very top that were just a question mark, because he didn't have to say anything else. If you didn't understand how to answer that question, you shouldn't be there. And so heads of state also don't have time. So you have to create that picture. It's efficient, it's focused, and being able to do that implies a lot of things about the collaboration, as Mr. Delvin said, about the sources of information, because they want to know that that information is credible, and about whether his system and his guys are working. And I particularly like the Danish point of view, which is it takes time. And all good things take time. And we have to look on a long level, and we can't rush it, especially when we talked yesterday about changing cultures and mindsets. All strategies are eaten for breakfast by cultures. So cultures take a time to change. And so with that intervention and summary of sorts, and which we'll provide more later with Chris at the end of the day, I'd love to open the floor to any questions from any of the magnificent presentations that we've heard thus far. ISS, I believe? Yeah.
Thank you very much, and apologies for not introducing myself yesterday. I'm Karina Brewer, or for the South Africans, Karina Brivar, from the Institute for Security Studies here in South Africa, the country of the Springboks. Sorry, Chris.
Excellent.
In my former life, I specialized on maritime security research, and the one thing I feel that comes up consistently, but that's always lacking in these sorts of meetings, are two things that are standing in the way of successful maritime security or law enforcement interdictions. The first one is flag state responsibility, or I think more importantly, the failure of flag states to adhere to their responsibility to exercise effective control. And the second one is the role of private industry. So someone mentioned yesterday about container trafficking. And I was wondering if either of the working groups or member states are specifically engaging on flag states that are known to not adhere to the international obligations, as well as with private industry to see, you know, the ISPS code should be the basic minimum. And I was wondering if anyone's working with those parties to see if you can address one of those two barriers. Thank you.
I think that's a great question. Would anyone like to respond on that? I myself don't know the answer, but I think it's a great question. If not, I would hope. Yes, we have Yunus.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. It's a touching question and related to the entire industry, and we have a proposal that we will come up after this session, that we are going to focus on the issue that recently been raised, and it's very important. But I think we are moving forward toward this, inlining sub-working groups under the existing two working groups through the DCoC JA, whereby we can elaborate further that area. So I can see it's a very interesting, and she raised, and what we would like to do on behalf of the member states here to just give consideration into that extent. Back to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Yunus. And I believe Chris would like to also make an intervention.
Thank you, Chair. In the context of developing a maritime security strategy, taking into account flag states, taking into account private entities is going to be very, very important. On the flag state issue... Chris, can I request that you bring that closer? Sorry. Yeah. I'm stuck. No, I can't move. Right. On the flag state issue, where flag states are not implementing properly, you could take a leaf out of the safety handbook. Port state control, naming and shaming, delaying. If the ship's not complying, it's not moving. If it's not moving, it's not making money. And therefore, its incentive is to comply. If it's fishing, we've talked before about establishing a register of suspect vessels. Wherever these ships call into ports in the region, give them hell. That goes down to the communication piece, the information sharing piece, knowing what's going on, knowing how to deal with it and communicating those threats. On the private industry side, if you're talking about on land, that's really going to ISPS, it's going to ILO, IMO Code of Practice on Security in Ports. It's about getting all stakeholders talking to each other, engaging with each other. It could be positive things like community security best practice and CSA Act and stuff that my organization deals with. It could be establishing port security advisory committees which bring the private industry in. because they're a stakeholder as well. Everyone's got to talk to each other. Everyone's got to understand what everyone else is doing and making it work. Hope that helps. Thank you, Chair.
Beautiful. And I'd just like to pick up on Chris's last point about the private sector. For myself, there's no version of the story, especially when we're talking about ISPS code and port compliance, because of the huge activities by the private sector on the ports. They have to be part of your stakeholder group. They are part of that system. So it's exactly Chris's point there. So I should hope that we do engage all the stakeholders. It's literally an elaboration of everything that we're saying in that context. So I should hope that they do work together with the organization, and yeah, Chris nailed it. So we're done, yeah? Oh, okay, so, well, with much fanfare, I have to say, although I have to tell you, I do feel a little bit sad about ending it so early, but we are at the end of our panel discussion 4, and we'll have a summary later today. I truly enjoyed that and learned a lot, and I hope everyone did too, and we look forward to getting back on schedule with the rest of the day. And again, thank you to all the presenters and the questions, which were enlightening. And yeah, so great work, everybody. Look forward for the rest of the afternoon. And with that, I sign off.
Thank you. And I really apologize for this. There are quite a few important questions. Now I'm going to give the facilitator a task of finding answers to these. So anything that wasn't answered, Mr. Facilitator, can you find out for me if there are any other questions? Because then we find an avenue to have those answers. Thank you very much. It is now 12:33. And according to this, we have to break for lunch at 1300. We've managed to claw back 15 minutes, so please don't lose the 15 minutes. Thank you very much, sir. Can I then request Captain Abe from Ethiopia, as well as Ms. Mashudu from South Africa, to come and take us through the next item, and that's capacity building coordination, the proposed establishment of thematic areas discussion. I believe it's an important discussion as well, this one, because it has implications on the resolution. So we need to take this time, but can I request colleagues that you can come and be here? Yes. So over to you. Can we try and still meet my lunchtime cutoff?
Good afternoon. I won't stand in between the delegates' lunch. I am very quick as a runner, so I will run through my script. I am Mashudu Nefumbada from the National Department of Transport. We are your host. And yesterday, most people thought I missed the gala dinner. I didn't. If you didn't realize, the Queen had a delegation of the Duchess from the Kingdom of Mujaji, and I was one of them. Thank you. And we did value your presence last night as we showcased a portion of our multifaceted culture. We are a rainbow nation, and I'm sure you've seen that. And I'm sure you've blended in very well and found yourself fitting in one of those spectrums, colorful spectrums of the rainbow. I do have a co-presenter, Captain Gettinet, who will conclude the presentation. If we can comment the slide. The first slide for the presentation. Okay, while they're still finding it, that is not the correct slide. I will piggyback from our head of delegation yesterday, the minister, and the deputy minister also reiterated the message, as well as our deputy director general. I will rather paraphrase it so that it suits the presentation. Alone, we are just a drop of water, a ripple, a splash, but together we can make waves. My own vernac is Chivenda. There is an idiom that says, "Monwe muti au tusi matutu." A direct translation means that one finger cannot pick a bean. Where am I going with this? I can pose a question, what do waves do? Or rather, how are waves formed? The scientists will say that waves are a friction between wind and the surface water, or energy transferred from the wind to the sea. But in simple terms, waves are created by energy, and they transmit energy. I am from the generation millennials, so we use hashtags. My first hashtag will be hashtag energy. What does energy do? I'm sure we all walked this morning to this venue. So energy gives you the ability to walk. You can run. Like our Indian delegation, you can complete an Ironman. You can swim. You can cycle. You can manufacture boats. Or even better, you can configure and reconfigure elements. Standing before us is a proposal of thematic areas. I will take a quote from one of our presidents, Thabo Mbeki, who said, "Science is always inquiring." I will share with you, I'm sure many you do not know, one of my milestones. I am one of the pioneers from the school of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute that was developed or established in 2012, and I'm one of the first graduates. Currently, it's called the African School of Public and International Affairs. I studied there something called thought leadership, which encourages critical interrogation of current policies, strategies, practices, and applies appreciative inquiry of what is good in contemporary, cultural, and global context. Next slide, please. So, as I said, standing before us is the proposed thematic areas. We all know, and we do have a slogan for the DCoC, that we are the premier forum for maritime security coordination in the Western Indian Ocean and the Gulf of Aden. I do have a hashtag, number 2, hashtag premier. In soccer, which I do not do, there is something called Premier League, I guess. I do boge. So to remain at a premier, you need to be at the top of your game. And that will be followed by my hashtag 3. You need to be pragmatic. If you have to be pragmatic, you need to be sensible. It was reiterated throughout the sessions yesterday. We must consider the sovereignty of the member states. We must be realistic, and we must be rational. So a call awaits for critical leadership that was formulated from Working Group 2. And what do we mean by that? We need thought leaders, we need specialized people who will lead in respective areas and give guidance accordingly, so that everyone can then take the expertise from them and then implement the action plan. Thought leadership, as I have learned, is evolutionary. It must always be part of an ever-evolving scenario. So my 4th hashtag is thought leadership, which is a proposal of the thematic areas. And the proposal is that we need technical groups, which will be led by specialized people. and focus on the challenge. Next slide is appropriate, and focus on the threats that are listed on the Djibouti Code of Conduct as amended, the gender amendment. I'm not going to go through the threats. Next slide, please. We all know the threats, but we can all agree that we are not all specialists in all these threats. You ask Mashudo about environmental threats and how to counter environmental threats. I have no idea. I cannot lead that technical group. And I don't think if we group together as a working group, my input there will be very minimal. I'll just be learning. And I can go to the Tawambeki Institute of Leadership and learn. And then I can come back maybe with better knowledge to lead in that expert area. So as I conclude from my side, we can move to the next, that's the next slide of my conclusion. So this gives us an opportunity as a proposal from Working Group 2. Can we consider these thematic areas that will be concluded by my co-presenter, Captain Gettinet? As our facilitator has said, that there is an action plan which needs to be implemented. And one of the assessments from the working groups was that the DCoC lacks implementation of those resolutions. And those resolutions, I'm sure they are hanging somewhere on the action plan. And someone needs to implement them. And as I said, if Mashudu doesn't know environmental matters, she's not going to implement that. Or rather, it will be slow, because I still need to consult. And that's not what we don't need. That's what causes delays. So we must acknowledge that there are experts who can lead in IUU fishing, in environmental threats, in security threats, in safety incidents, and forth and forth. So that's the end of my presentation. I will let the captain to take us through the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mashudu. She has presented the non-paper of South Africa. It had been in discussion in the last virtual forums, as well as in some of the workshops. You know, captains, they like to delegate. As a working group chair, I've been coordinating all this. Now I'm finding the right people to take care of it for me. So my job will be just to take care of that, only 7 personnel or 7 chairs. The proposed working groups are specialized groups within a larger DCoC working group 2 capacity building coordination frameworks that are going to focus on specific aspects of the maritime security. Thus, working groups will work together under the umbrella of the Working Group 2 to address various challenges and risks associated with maritime security and ensure effective coordination and cooperation among the signatory states and the friends of the DCoC and other stakeholders. The proposal was on the table some time ago, as I said. It has been in discussion by various virtual meetings and workshops, and now we are here for a decision. The purpose and advantage of creating the sub-working groups. As you all know, the JEDA amendment on the DCoC, when it was expanded the scope of the implementation of our initiative, and the national focal points were having difficulty to deal with matters that are not under the maritime administration mandate. Hence, a whole government approach has been advocated. In this regard, the formation of these thematic areas will assist as follows. The first area is the specialization. Next slide, please. Next. Specialization. Sub-working groups allow for a more focused and specialized approach to addressing specific issues within a larger agenda. This enables experts within the signatory states and friends of the DCoC in the field to contribute their knowledge and skills towards finding effective solutions. The second is efficiency. By breaking down the larger working group into smaller subgroups, tasks can be delegated and progress can be simultaneously on different aspects of the agenda. This increased efficiency and helps in achieving goals within the given time frame. The third aspect is inclusivity. Sub-working groups provide a platform for diverse stakeholders to participate and contribute. This allows for a wider range of perspectives and expertise to be considered, leading to more comprehensive and inclusive decision-making process. The fourth aspect is flexibility. Sub-working groups can be formed and dissolved as needed, depending on the urgency and relevance of the issue at hand. This flexibility allows for a more adaptable and responsive approach to emerging challenges. Saying this, there might be some challenges expected, and we need to discuss how we are going to deal with them. One of the challenges we are expecting is communication. Next slide, please. Communication. Coordinating working groups require effective and clear communication among team members. It is crucial for coordinating working groups. However, ensuring clear and timely communication among group members can be difficult at times. This can be challenging when team members are located in different time zones, when working remotely, speaking different language, or having varying communication preferences. Miscommunication or lack of communication can lead to is understanding, and delays and inefficiencies may happen. The third is different perspectives and opinions. Working groups often consist of individuals with different backgrounds, expertise, and opinions. While diversity can be beneficial, it can also lead to conflicts and disagreements. Coordinators need to ensure that all perspectives are heard and respected, and that conflicts are resolved in a constructive manner. The next is time management. Coordinating working groups require effective time management to ensure that tasks are completed within deadlines. It can be challenging to align schedules and prioritize tasks, especially when team members have different workloads or commitments. The next is collaboration and teamwork. Working groups rely on collaboration and teamwork to achieve their goals. However, coordinating and managing the dynamics of a group can be challenging, especially when team members have different working styles, personalities, and conflicts arise. Accountability. Ensuring that each team member takes responsibility for their assigned tasks and delivers on this commitment can be a challenge as well. And finally, goal alignment. We know the goal of the DCoC, we know the goal of the working group too. So these thematic areas also should understand their goal and deliver effectively. Accordingly, coordinating the working group requires aligning the goals and objectives of individual members with the overall objective of the group. It can be challenging to ensure that all members are on the same page, working towards a common goal. Coordinators must facilitate discussions and establish a shared vision to keep. Saying this, I propose thematic areas. Next slide, please. The first thematic area is illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing. The second area is port and ship security and protection of vital coastal installations, mainly ISPS code related. The third one is new and emerging threats to maritime security. This may include terrorism, cyber attack, drone attack, and other similar threats. The fourth one is tracking in arms, narcotics, and psychotropic substances. The fourth one, illegal trade in wildlife and other items. Sorry, the fifth one. Followed by threats to maritime environment and human trafficking and smuggling, which is displayed on the slides. In conclusion, ultimately the aim is to establish a well-coordinated region-wide response to maritime security threats, ensuring the safety of security of navigation, which puts the DCoC gender amendment at the forefront of this efforts. Taking into consideration that the topic has been in discussion for some time, I submit for this high-level meeting for decision. Thank you very much. If there is any question, maybe for another 2-3 minutes we can take. India, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for a very enlightening presentation on the resolution. Our delegation has read the draft resolution in detail. We've also obviously read the SOP and been part of making it. I have a suggestion. So, and I'm going to be very blunt about it because I think we need to speak very transparently here if we want to move forward in a concentrated manner with economy of effort. So I find that the DCoC-J resolution has listed certain threats. The SOP that we've developed in the last few months have listed the definitions of certain threats and have made procedures and forms according to the threats listed in the SOP. Now we have a resolution which seeks and recommends to form working groups, sub-working groups on a different set of threats. And I'm not saying different, of course, some of them are common. They're not completely aligned with the JA threat matrix itself. For example, in the DCoC-J agreement text, the threats start with piracy and armed robbery, maritime terrorism, IU fishing, trafficking, and so on and so forth. But I find some of these missing in the current working group formulation. So what I would recommend is, so from our experience in dealing with certain multilateral groups, and the most recent being Quad, wherein we formed a group called the Quad Maritime Security Working Group, announced it last month at New York. The foreign ministers of Quad announced it. And we have certain thematic areas that we work on. But we've taken a conscious decision that within this Quad Maritime Working Group, Security Working Group, we do not form further subgroups as it actually complicates the issue, but rather form certain subtasks under the working group. So my recommendation for DCoC is, firstly, we need to align the agreement with the SOP with this resolution. And currently that match doesn't exist. For example, piracy and armed robbery is completely missing from this. That is number one. So while you're going to achieve accountability with sub-working groups, my suggestion would be let the agenda drive the forum and do not make fora to have particular agenda. You're going to end up with 7 groups here. They're going to be difficult to manage, sub-working groups. They're going to be difficult to manage. It'll have a higher loading on the funding, higher loading on time. We may not be able to pull it off as a regional architecture. So my suggestion would be that you have a working group 1 which is looking after ISN. Working group 2 may focus on capability and capacity building. You could have a working group 3 which focuses on operational coordination for these illicit maritime activities, including and aligned with the SOPs already made, because you had the procedural forms ready already. So I would suggest that you align with that in this resolution. So that's my first recommendation. And I would only end by saying that this principle of KISS, keep it short and simple, would really be very relevant in this regard. So that's a very humble suggestion from the Indian delegation. Having read all these 3 documents in detail, we feel alignment is the best way forward within DCoC. Otherwise, we would have a problem in op coordination where you have a procedural form for piracy and armed robbery, but you don't have a sub-working group to handle that form. So this is my main suggestion.
Thank you, India. Shishels, followed by the IMO.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick intervention now towards this part of the second day of our presentation. in the sense that when we talk about new and emerging threats, we should think about things like the war in Ukraine. And why do I say that? Because I think there can be no doubt that what we're watching there is a cauldron, an acceleration of innovation, for example, in drone technology as a form of weapons, by sea and by air. Okay, it's all the way up north in Russia, but just like macaque monkeys learn how to use stones to get tools, the ROI is out of this world. You have people in basements, Ukrainians learning how to create these drones with off-the-shelf parts. I think it's inevitable that that will find its way to other places through social media and the dark web. So in terms of new and emerging threats, we have an area of influence when we talk about the DCoC that we worry about. But I think in this thing, I think you have to look at where are the cutting edges of the threats and already start planning for it within your own region.
Okay, Mitch, please.
Thank you very much. In responding to Commodore Nitin, maybe to provide some background in the thinking behind these thematic areas. And this comes out of the frustration that the Working Group 2 has experienced when trying to coordinate what is already happening, dealing with the problem as is. Because if you take IUU fishing, for example, we know there are very many programs in the region, but they're not coordinated. There's a work that, for example, FAO is doing. You've got Interpol, you've got Indian Ocean Tuna Commission, and very many others. So the idea now of having those thematic areas is you have a lead agency. So for example, if I continue with that element of FAO, with IUU fishing, FAO has quite a big stake there. So could be the lead agency. And then try and bring all these forums that are working with the regional countries, because it's confusing for them. Because the other problem, even for you as partners, sometimes you may be working within one country, but you've got different focal points. And therefore, to try and get the experts to work together and bring all those programs together and the amplification of that effort. Now, regarding the number of forums, I know it's ambitious, but I think the way we've looked at, for example, you said piracy is not there, but actually the first one that was presented, the one on the ISPS code, the one on ship and port security and protection of vital, whatever. We try to bring all these together because otherwise, if we look at all the crimes that are listed under the JEDA amendment, from the definition of transnational organized crimes, actually there's a lot more than that, which would have meant having around 13 different forums. So we try to bring all these together. So I think it's really going to be about the work that happens by those having the coordinated effort that's going to make the difference. Thank you.
Is there anybody else, or shall I respond? For the sake of time, because it's lunchtime now, let me say a few words and we can conclude. Thank you, India, for the suggestion. The example you gave, piracy, I think it was well answered by Mitch. It had been in discussion. However, the iSpace covers piracy, and the scope is a bit more than piracy. At the same time, iSpace is the area of specialization for the IMO, in which we get a lot of capacity building from the IMO and the friends of the DCoC. That is the reason we kept the name. However, it is, as I said, it's flexible. We will ensure that the teams are aligned with our main legislation, the DCoC JEDA amendment legislation. That is my response to you. We can also discuss later on individually. The Seychelles is more of a comment, so I don't need to respond for that. Saying this, we will have a resolution on this regard, I hope, So I request everybody's involvement to ensure that this happens. You know, captains, they like to delegate. So I want to delegate, but take the responsibility until I am changed. This is what I'm requesting the floor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Captain. Colleagues, distinguished delegates, thank you very much for working with me. I think we have completely recovered the time now. It is now 1300. Now we are going to break for lunch. I had specific instructions from my deputy chair, whom I'm looking for. He suggested that the sessions after lunch need to be managed separately. We've got a session, a closed meeting that continues in the room, and we have the meeting for the Friends of the DCoC. They're going to be meeting at a room down the passage towards the right. It's called the holding room, just after the bathrooms. But I'm sure we'll put somebody down there. Can I ask my secretariat and organizers to make sure that you've got enough seating arrangement there? Apart from that, as I'm saying, it is now 2 minutes past 1. If there's no other comment from my facilitator, can I dismiss this session of the meeting for us to resume sharp at 1400? Thank you very much.